Is everybody ready?
Yeah.
We'll get it started then. Just give me a thumbs up.
Someday we won't have these damn meetings.
There we go. Okay. Okay, this is a special meeting for Tuesday, May 5th, 2020, 5 p.m. Kenyon City Hall. Call to order. Mayor Henke is here. City Administrator Mark Balsing is here. Council members are all present by the way of Zoom. We also have the city engineer, Joe.
Hello.
And project
Richard.
manager, Derek here. And also
is
now
Mark.
we do have on
I'm
Richard
just
by
calling you about
phone.
from the council meeting.
Yes,
So I don't know if you're planning on calling in on Zoom or if you want to just do the speakerphone business.
how about this time we do the speakerphone?
All right.
I noticed I got an email from you that had the particular meeting number and the password, and I thought about doing that and didn't get there.
It works really easy, surprisingly, how well it does work, Richard. I've tried it myself when I have been out on the road. And actually,
Okay.
it works better. You can still call it in. And I think it would probably work a little bit better for you. But we can go ahead with it as it is. So we already have called the order, and you are present. Everybody is present somewhere, somehow, but we're all here. Okay, we'll get this baby going then. Number 2 on the Derek Ollinger, project engineer, Kenyon Business Park and Utility Expansion Project. Derek, would you like to get a run at it quick?
Sure. I'm going to share my screen. So can everyone see a copy of the agenda up here right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, the first item that's on the agenda here is just a brief review of the feasibility report for this project. And this may sound a little bit strange that we're looking at a feasibility report during the same meeting that we'll be also considering final plans. But as I had kind of put in the update letter to everyone, this project will include a portion of the project cost would be assessed back to the newly formed properties within the business park. So as part of that process, we need to follow the Chapter 429 state statutes process for going about that easement. And the first step in that process is this feasibility report. So since we have talked about this project in quite a bit of detail, I'll just briefly review what's included in this feasibility report, and then we can kind of move on from there. So as you know, existing conditions on that site is just an undeveloped ag field. Currently, the proposed improvements will include the construction of about 800 feet of new street. There'll be storm sewer extensions, sanitary sewer, water main extensions, as well as site grading. The overall project costs for that project, as I have it in this feasibility report, is just over 2.2 million. I will point out that total project number is a little bit different, a little bit higher than what we have plugged into the those financing options that were reviewed just a week ago with the city's financial advisor. But I kept the numbers a little bit higher just so that this feasibility report would still be applicable and usable if for whatever reason, the project costs go over the estimate, that we wouldn't have to redo this or revise it, that type of thing. In terms of overall funding for the project, as you know, there's a BDPI grant or Business Development Public Infrastructure grant that will pay for a substantial portion of the construction costs. The amount of that grant is $670,000, or just over $670,000, with the remainder being city costs. So out of those city costs, a portion of those would be assessed back to the actual properties. So there's 4 new industrial zoned lots that will be formed, or that were formed when we platted the property out there. So as is presented in this feasibility report, those special assessments for each of those lots would total up to just over $100,000, or about $25,000 per lot. And the plan as of current with those assessments is obviously you wouldn't have a buyer for those, so those assessments would be deferred until the property is actually ready to develop and build out. A project schedule, basically the schedule that we're on here tonight is to accept this feasibility report here tonight, and basically set a date for the next step in the process, which is the improvement hearing. Also during that improvement hearing, which would be scheduled for the June meeting, we would be looking at bids received from contractors on this project. So we'll get into that process in just a second. But that's kind of a brief summary of what's included in this feasibility report. For this step in the process. Are there any questions related to the contents of that feasibility report?
No.
I don't have any. I've gone through it.
Major feedback?
Yeah, I know where it's coming from, unfortunately. Hey, Richard, we're kind of getting feedback from you there. I don't know.
Yeah, tell him to get onto the Zoom. He can, I know if he's got the numbers, he can do it.
Can you hear me, Richard?
Yes.
Okay, we're getting some feedback from you there. I don't know if there's noise in the background or what, but.
Oh, okay. How about now?
Yeah, it's better.
That's much better.
I
Derek,
just admitted one other person to the meeting. I'm not quite sure who that is. They're calling in from a phone.
It's Randy.
Oh, it's Randy. Okay.
Hey, Randy.
Hi, guys.
Tom, did you have a question?
well, Derek, I was extremely distracted by that feedback, and I could, it was so annoying. I was only catching every other word. Basically, what are we looking at here with this feasibility and these numbers that you're projecting here? These are just, this is what the numbers are turning out to be?
No. So basically, what we're doing with this project is we're going to be assessing a portion of the project cost back to the properties that will be platted with this process. And even though the city is effectively assessing itself, you still need to follow the state statute requirement and process for doing all of this. So basically that process, I should have explained this in a little bit more detail. I apologize, but the first step in that process is to prepare a feasibility report. That's this report here tonight.
Okay.
Second step in the process is an improvement hearing, where you consider whether or not to move forward with the improvement. And then the last step in the process before those assessments actually get certified to the property is the assessment hearing. So it's very similar to the process that we went through for Red Wing Avenue, only this is kind of like, it's kind of like we're going through the motions. It's more of a formality in this process because the only ones that you're assessing is basically yourselves. That's the city.
Okay.
So this is very much a shortened version of the detail that we went into Red Wing Avenue just for that purpose. Because
okay. And in the end, we can assess each property that we sell the $25,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And the thing is, we're doing this as a procedural thing, Tom, but it's also a way that we can be flexible with a business if they come in and want to buy one of those lots or two of the lots or whatever, you know, we've got a sale price we can kind of work with. And then we've also got the assessments for the utilities. So for instance, if we sell the land, you know, at basically zero or a very low number, we still got the utilities, and part of that could be directly paid up front. We could spread it out over a period of time to help the business out, to kind of provide an incentive. And then we also have the tax increment financing that'll be set up, and that very well may go toward paying this assessment off and then go toward other costs. So it's kind of a procedural thing. And I know for somebody, even who's got experience with a public works project or an industrial park, this is not, I mean, it's pretty kind of a unique thing, but it's very common when a city does a business park, that they will, they'll take the assessment, you know, assess back to the lots. And right now we own the lots as a city or an EDA. So basically it's like we're assessing ourselves, but it's a procedural thing. And it provides more flexibility to help with incentives to help try to, you know, help bring in business into that park.
Yeah, you're basically building in a little wiggle room for everybody to work with once the time comes.
Exactly.
Okay, I got it. Thank you for helping.
Trying to explain that it's not a normal way that you see, you know, street projects, because usually the assessments are going back to the property owners. Like for you on Red Wing, 95% of these kind of projects work that way. But
Right.
when you have a public business park development like this is where you see you'll see assessments set up to help recoup, you know, not only the land costs, but also for the utility costs. That's where the assessments come in. So
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, accordingly, we have to set up a date for a public hearing,
it's in the resolution.
and that is in, for the June council meeting, which is June the 9th. So we're gonna have to pick a date for a public hearing, which,
Well, if you go with this, it's June.
the June 9th is a council meeting, I believe, isn't it?
Well, it would be, what he's talking about is doing it at the council meeting, because there probably won't be anybody that comes to the hearing per
Oh, I
se.
see, okay.
So just trying to do it during the council meeting.
So, okay, so then we just, okay,
Yeah.
very good. Does everybody understand that then, that we'll just have basically a public hearing at the city council meeting on June 9th? Is everybody in agreement with that then?
Public hearing.
Yeah, just like we had a public hearing for the Red Wing assessments, this will be the same thing.
Basically opening up the floor to questions and concerns, comments, stuff like that.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think too many people are gonna show up, but we have to do it by law.
Yeah.
There is,
okay.
and there's mailed notices that, or not mailed notice, but like a published notice that goes out with this, that'll be in the paper.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tom, it's required for whenever you're doing assessments like this, it's part of the required process. Typically, you're assessing, you know, multiple property owners, so it gives those people that are getting assessed a chance to ask any questions or express any concerns. Here, the city owns all the lots, or the EDA does, so we don't expect any questions from the property owners, but somebody else from the public may want to hear the information or may have a general question they want to ask, but it is required to hold hold a public hearing whenever you're doing the special assessments like this.
Okay,
Is somebody backing up or is it just mine?
Somebody's back somewhere.
Yes, right.
Thank you, Joe, for explaining that.
Oh, my pleasure.
okay. Well, we'll try to move ahead then. If there isn't any questions on it, there is a resolution 2020-11, which basically is therefore now be it resolved by the city council of the city of Kenyon, Goodhue County, Minnesota. Actually, it's for a status chapter 429, an estimated total cost of improvement of $2,234,000. And then number 2 on that list is for that proposed improvement for the public to be on June the the 9th, 2020 at City Hall at 7 PM at the regular council meeting. So make it go a little bit faster. I'm going to approve or make a motion that we approve this. We will need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, motion been made and second for resolution 2020-11. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes passed. Okay. We got that one.
Okay.
Okay, then the next I believe we're gonna have to work on is approve
2012.
2012 of approving final plans and specs. Again, Derek or Joe, you wish to continue with that?
Yes, I can go through this one as well. So said, kind of mentioned before, basically where we are at with this project is that the final plans and specifications for the actual design, you know, what's proposed out here for the business park and the utility extension, all that design work is now done. We have the construction plan set that's ready to go out. The specifications are ready to go out, and basically the project is ready to be advertised for bids. So I'll get into a couple of details here in just a second, but basically the resolution that would be on the floor would be resolution 2020-12, and that resolution basically accepts those or approves those final plans and orders the advertisement for bids. So if that goes through, the bid opening would be held on May 27th, and during the June 9th council meeting, the same date as we just previously discussed for the improvement hearing, we'd have actual bids for construction and understand what those, we'll have a better understanding of what the final construction costs would be. I will point out a couple of things in these actual construction plans. It was last week on the 28th, we met with the EDA to go over these final plans and just review a couple of options that we're calling value engineering options. Basically, a couple of changes or revisions that we can make to the plan in order to reduce some of the costs. I think I had mentioned during the last regular city council meeting, would have been in April, that when we were running our cost estimates a couple of weeks back, those costs were coming in a little bit higher than previous versions of the estimate that we had looked at. So just to kind of briefly review a couple of those options that will be worked into this plan. Find a good page here. So this is just loading up here. So what you're looking at here right now is a grading plan showing a good portion of the actual development site. One of the things I will point out with that is along County Road 12 here, up to this point, realistically still moving forward, we've discussed this project as including a right turn lane on County Road 12. What we've done for this actual final plan set is we've pulled out that particular item and included it as an add alternate. So if you remember, we did that for the Red Wing Avenue project. We had the alley and 4th Street were alternates, so that when the contractors bid it, they can give us very specific pricing for that particular item of the project. And depending on how the bids come in, the council will have the option when they're ready to, consider that project for award, whether or not they want to award that item specifically. So that's basically, that right turn lane is basically included as an alternate. So you'll have the option of whether or not to move forward with it now, or if you want to delay it to some point in the future. One other item that we're doing a similar thing with is some storm sewer that will be between, I'll zoom in a little bit here. We've got Engel Drive is the new street that's being built. And then over on the left-hand side of the screen, we've got our stormwater pond, where, you know, obviously any of the stormwater will be going. Through this location, through most of the project design, we've had storm sewer, which will connect Engel Drive up to the pond directly, and there wouldn't be a need for any swale here. As a cost savings measure, what we had discussed with the EDA on the 28th was to pull that storm sewer out, and just like the turn lane, just include that storm sewer as an add alternate as well. So basically what's included in the base bid is any of the storm sewer that's within Engel Drive will just discharge into an overland ditch or swale that will then convey water over to the stormwater pond. If pricing comes in, you know, below the estimate or at a reasonable amount that you think that you'd like to move forward with installing that storm sewer, then the city will have the choice of awarding that storm sewer extension as alternate.
But it's going to be bid with the 2 alternates, right?
Yep, be the 2 alternates. So alternate 1 will be the turn lane, alternate 2 will be the storm sewer extension, right?
Okay.
So, there were a couple of other kind of minor options that we had looked at, and basically it's included in the base bid. This gravel turnaround on the north end of Engel Drive, we reduced the size of that just to save on some gravel and excavation costs. That seemed to be a pretty minor revision, but that was one other revision that we had included to save some cost. So other than that, were there any questions, you know, specifically on the actual plans?
Derek?
Yes.
Yeah, I do have. Now, I will say this year I was not at the EDA meeting, but reading all of this over and kind of questioning it, right turn lane off of County Road 12, I see as an absolute must. For one is safety, even though it's 30 miles an hour on it. We may as well, we got the road, or the road will be tore up to an extent. We're also working in that particular area, and I say it has to be done. The question that I do have is the length of it coming from the east to the west to the intern lane into Engel Drive. How much of it, I didn't actually get that, or I don't recall what it is, of the extension leaving Engel Drive going west on County Road 12 is one of the questions that I have, if you can fill that in for me. And the storm sewer extension, just letting the water run down that grade is going to somewhat fill that pond in, which is going to result in having it to be cleaned a little bit more often. I personally feel that we should put both of them in and go for it. Now, I'm kind of questioning, are you backing down because you figure that the cost is going to be greater than what you have anticipated?
Well, I mean, yeah, that was the intention with these 2 alternates, is that if the costs come in higher, then these could be 2 items that you would have the option of you know, whether or not you'd like to build them now or later. With either of these options, if you chose not to award them, you could absolutely, you know, do either of them at any point in the future. Like for the storm sewer, as an example, if you chose not to award that second alternate, the storms, or there would just be a ditch that would be built through there. And basically what you would do is, if you wanted to extend storm sewer at some point in the future, it would be a matter of basically setting pipe at the bottom of that ditch and backfilling over top of it. You know, in the meantime, you know, if that storm sewer extension were not put in, I will tell you, yes, there will be more maintenance associated with the if you did put in a storm sewer swale or ditch as it's currently in here, but there is pretty decent grade on this here right now, so it should drain fairly well. I guess I wouldn't see a big, you know, a substantial change in the amount of sediment that gets into the pond. It's clayey soils through these areas. If we're talking through an area that's, you know, pretty sandy, you're going to have a lot more issues with erosion. And then you might want to look into, you know, an option where maybe we'd be lining that channel with riprap or some other type of improvement to make sure that there isn't erosion that deposits into this into the pond. But in this particular case, it's clayey soils. You know, other than some minor erosive action down on the bottom of it, I wouldn't see any large cause for concern on the actual swale.
If we were to put these two on alternates, what do you have a ballpark figure? What each one costs?
The value of both of these, yeah, no, that's a good point. So that the alternate 2, when we ran our final numbers on that, I'm estimating that would be around 55,000, I believe is what the number was.
Eric, you want me to find that in the EDA packet? I can
Sure,
look that
that's
up here.
fine. I know when we had made this revision for the alternate, we also made some other changes with the storm sewer that added up to about 75,000. But just for this alternate alone, I was estimating around 55,000.
Okay.
For the right turn lane, this was coming in. It's basically the grading, some additional grading to grade in the turn lane and the pavement itself.
Yeah. Derek,
so
in
that
the
one was coming in just over 40,000.
Oh, so it's not a humongous portion of the project.
Not a humongous portion. Like we made you know, several other minor changes that added up to, you know, saving you know, basically another 100,000 is what we were estimating. But you know, again, just like any project, these are all estimates until we actually get our
Right.
It's just a matter of what can we do to try to bring project costs down. And I guess, you know, we didn't really spend much time at the front end here talking about, you know, why those project costs were coming in a little bit higher. Maybe I can kind of address that a little bit. Let me go back to this overall site figure. So just to give kind of a little bit of background, initially, you know, it was maybe middle of 2019 to early 2019, we were actually looking at a different layout for this area, and it basically included just the construction of one block of Engel Drive. So it's about 400 feet of new street. And in September of last year, we had a discussion with the EDA, and this overall layout for what was to be included in this first phase of development was revised slightly for a number of reasons. But ultimately what it added up to was we're going to construct an additional block of street that would allow these two developments, you know, off of County Road 12 to also be developed. So you'd have 4 developable lots in there. When we added that additional block of street, after subtracting out the storm sewer, it was adding about $130,000 to $140,000 in extra costs. Had some discussion about the storm sewer during that period of time, and decided to plug this storm sewer back into it. That storm sewer was in that, you know, $50,000 to $75,000 range in extra costs. The last item that came a little bit later during the design process was when we were working through the details of what was needed for the Goodhue County permits that we needed for all of this work out in County Road 12. Basically what we found was we're going to need to replace about another 150 to 200 feet of County Road 12 pavement in order to accommodate their request for how we did this utility work within County Road 12. And although it's just a 24-foot wide road, you know, it did add up to, you know, quite a substantial amount. I mean, that's close to $100,000 just right there. So it's a matter of these, you know, smaller changes when you're thinking of, like, you know, total percentage of the project costs, and they're all kind of happening individually, but collectively, you know, all together they were adding up to, you know, a total project cost that was just more than what was previously discussed or accounted for. So that's where we came in, and we were looking at these, you know, these opportunities to save money. And Mayor Henke, you had mentioned, you had mentioned that you're concerned that you know, much rather have that storm sewer pipe connecting Engle Drive to the pond, and also having that right turn lane. I think we're on the same page with that's definitely the preferred option. That was the reason why we left them in as an alternate and didn't just delete them automatically.
This was discussed at the EDA meeting, and the alternates came up as an option to keep both of those, you know, in the picture, but yet give the council more flexibility of, depending on how costly. We hope that we're in a better fit environment, but, you know, we were $200,000 higher than that we had last fall. So we were trying to come up with some ways to try to bring the cost back down to where the original estimate was. And this way, it still gives the option of those two items. And who knows, maybe we'll get better, more competitive pricing, because this may force the bidders to, you know, kind of look at this more in depth, and we might actually do better cost-wise. But this way, we still have these options off the table. I would still recommend going that route with it.
Yeah, I understand that part of it. I do, but I just feel that is something that
well, when the bids come in, that's when you gotta stick to your guns and say, we gotta do it, but we gotta see what kind of numbers we
yeah,
got.
I agree with that. There is one question I have is on the Engle Drive.
Yeah.
And that, if I'm correct, I read this all over, but I don't see it at the moment. Did you say there was a 2-inch blacktop surface? Putting black on, and then was 5 inches of grade or so? Can you kind of review that a little bit for me? Because I'm wondering about 2 inches is awfully thin for trucks to arrive, even if they're bobtail.
Yeah, and that would be too thin. The section of pavement on Engle Drive, I don't think I included the typical sections on here, but it's not 2 inches, it's 6 inches. And it's got it's got a pretty substantial section of class 5 and sand below that. So I wouldn't see much reason to worry about the structure of the pavement. It's built as a higher traffic and heavier vehicle type of pavement in order to accommodate the traffic that we would expect through an industrial area. Along County Road 12 here, actually the pavement is a little bit less thin, but basically in that case we're just meeting the county's requirements for, you know, what they need to match back in with the county road. But, yeah.
I'll just jump in here for a second. I'm looking at the plan right now. Derek, if you want, I can share my screen, but basically it's 3 layers of blacktop. Each one is 2 inches thick. So it adds up to a total of 6.
Yeah.
So Doug, maybe that's what you heard was.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was trying to go back through here and read that where it was, because I really questioned it. Even you know, where your garage in your own personal home is at least a minimum of 2 inches. So that's why.
Yeah, this will be put down in three layers. Each layer 2 inches thick.
Yeah. So the top be the wear coat.
Yep.
Correct.
Yep.
Say, Derek, this is Dan Rexigal. Just a question, does Engle Drive, will that just stop right at the north of the lots? Is there gonna be like some sort of like gravel trail back to the city garage or anything, or is it's just gonna come to a dead end there?
It will just come to a dead end here initially, and basically at the end of the pavement, there'll be a little gravel turnaround area that you can, turn vehicles around.
So there won't be like a working pathway for like the city crew. If they want to get there, they're gonna have to go out 12 and come back up that way.
Not constructed with the project. Right now, what you have, it is going to be platted right away all the way to the north end of the project. So, there is that, but we wouldn't be building an actual roadway through there.
Yeah, it's kind of on a natural side hill when you look at the actual contours. So it would take a little bit more grading in order to get a flat trail to go from the end of the paved road back over to the city shop. So
Okay.
it would be, more than a little bit of work to extend that trail, or extend that roadway as a trail.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Well, this is Tom. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Tom.
Well, I agree with Mayor Engel, I agree with Doug about the turn lane on Highway 12. It's in the end a must, but my understanding at the EDA meeting was we were pulling it off as an option, knowing that down the road it'll more than likely be put on. We're just trying to reduce the cost of the initial. And that was part of the initial, kind of like the turnaround circle. We truncated that down to a steelhead per se.
Yep.
But I agree with Doug. In the end, we're going to need that turn lane. I never thought about an exit lane, but possibly that may be in the picture too. But yeah, I never thought of that turn lane as being eliminated 100%.
Sure.
I always thought it was just taken off for now, just to eliminate some costs up front.
Well, and there'll be a point, assuming the development is successful and you get businesses in there, when the traffic levels start to increase, there'll be a point where the county will say you have to have a turn lane there.
Yeah.
And the original thought was to be preemptive and put the turn lane in now, and knowing that it improves safety as well. But it's purely a factor of the economics at this point, because as Mark mentioned, the number we were previously working with that he was plugging in for his financing and his tax levy evaluations and all that was based on that previous layout. Remember we had the 3 lots that came right out to 12? Derek, maybe you can bring up the overall site view again.
Sure.
It's kind of handy to look at. Yeah, remember when we had a 3rd lot in the southeast corner of the site that actually was going to have a driveway off of 12. And that's what the costs were originally based off of. Remember we came up, there was a problem, the county didn't want a driveway there, so we looked at some other options to relay out the site. And Tom, I think that was the very first EDA meeting that you were at, and Mary Bailey as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one
So
of
that
the first.
reconfiguration added some cost, like Derek said, and then when the county, when they wanted a little bit of, they had some requests down on the work that we were doing along County Road 12, that added some cost that made the new estimate higher than what Mark had been using in his financial projections. And so Mark asked if we could identify some alternates to get the cost estimate back in line with what he was using for financing projections. That's why these 2 items, the storm sewer and the turn lane, were identified as alternates. But you're right. I mean, that the turn lane is going to be needed at some point.
Yeah.
More cost effective if we can build it now, and hopefully we get bids that are such that the city, when they review the numbers, you do have the money available and the financing available to do it now. That would be the best, the best of all scenarios.
Right.
But if we just left it in the plan, then you'd have to write a change order to delete it, and then you get into negotiations with the contractor. So it's better to identify it right up front in the bids as an option, because then it's totally in your control. You can do it, and they're committed to that price, or you can say, nope, we can't afford it, we don't want to do it, and then there's no negotiations or anything. You just simply cut it out of the project.
So right now it's moot. It's basically moot until we see the bids.
Yeah,
Correct.
that makes sense.
Yep.
I think you cleared it up much better. So I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, we'll ask again, is there any more questions on this?
Derek, how deep is that swale or whatever you call it that would go from Ingle Drive down to the detention or stormwater pond?
It is
Well-
1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
4, 5, 6, about 6 feet deep.
Okay,
I think you actually have a cross section, Derek, on the plan.
Yeah, I didn't include, or do I have it
I thought that might have been in there.
on this sheet? Hold on 1 second. I might have it. No, I didn't include that sheet in the excerpt.
Okay.
But it's about 6 feet deep.
Gonna have to dig a lot out.
And actually, rather than, well, I guess there is some excavation through there. I mean, realistically, the change in grading, you know, to do that basically means that they'll be taking one of the lots over on the side of the development, just down a little bit further to get a little bit more fill out of the site. And then they would fill that in over the storm sewer if you want to move forward with that alternate 2. Otherwise, it's just a little bit less grading to do right now for that.
And the way that drainage swale is laid out too, those side slopes are, they're mowable. They're a flat enough slope that it's mowable. And the bottom is going to be 6 feet wide, so that's mowable as well. So even if it were to have to exist in a turf, you know, a grass vegetated state for a few years before you could afford to put the pipe in, it's something that wouldn't become an eyesore and overgrown with weeds. It's, you know, the kind of thing where you could get through it with a lawnmower and keep it maintained.
Yep.
Has there been any investigation done prior to this to know if we're going to run into any drainage tiles or tiling from the field prior to this?
As I understand, there are not any drainage tiles through here. Wayne had went through and done some checking to see if he could find any records, and I'm not aware of any that are located through this area. I will point out that we do have included in the project requirements that if we come across any, especially any that are directed towards this residential area, that
Right.
image. So if we run into any that are, you know, say in this stormwater pond area that are directed towards this residential area, that we'll be plugging those off and, you know, not sending any water that's ponding up in this stormwater pond into this residential area anymore.
Okay. Thank you.
You never know what you'll find. It wouldn't surprise me if we find something, but yeah, nothing on the records right now.
Jimmy Hoffa.
You know, a couple other things I guess I didn't mention earlier is up to this point we've I'll just switch back to this overall image here. Up to this point we've been, you know, discussing this project as they would construct it, or construct a substantial amount of the improvements, you know, including all the utility work and the street construction this year. And basically the only thing that they would have left to do next year was put the final lift of blacktop on Engle Drive. One of the other value engineering alternates, it's not actually like a bid alternate, but one of the changes that we've made is that the overall project schedule would be revised. So basically what's included in these specifications is the contractor's required to get all of their utility work done during this year. and preliminary site grading. So basically, this would be shaped roughly to what the final grade would need to be once the project is completed, but they don't need to have it all done. So basically, the remainder of work that would be left during 2021 would be the construction of this road, paving on the right turn lane if that alternate is awarded, and basically just finishing touches on the overall site grading. So the advantage to doing that kind of revised construction schedule is it's going to allow contractors in the area to be installing pipe later in the year, as opposed to, say, like the Red Wing Avenue project. Our contractor out there needs to finish up with their pipe work early enough in the year so that they can still finish with the road construction by the substantial completion date in the fall. This will allow them to do pipe work basically all the way up until the end of the year. And what I would expect out of this is we can actually get some better pricing for that, because those utility crews are staying busy during a time of the year where they're normally fighting for work, trying to find other work. And I am seeing, I've been getting questions on this from contractors in the area, getting excited for when this project is actually going to be advertised. So there's strong interest in it. So I have reason to believe that, we'll get good numbers on it. But yeah, I guess that schedule change was another thing that should probably bring up here, just as a matter of understanding of a change that we've made in order to try to bring those project costs down.
I'll just jump in here too quick. I mean, in general, if you give a contractor more flexibility in the way he can bid a project and plan it and schedule it, he'll be able to give you a better price, right? The more constraints and restrictions you put on them and requirements, the more they're going to have to increase their prices to meet your schedule, or the more you may eliminate some contractors that might not be able to meet your requirements. So by giving them the next spring to finish the road work, that's going to give them more flexibility and hopefully give us better prices and get some contractors to look at this project that might not have looked at it if it all had to be done this year.
Yeah.
The other benefit too is a lot of times you get into the end of the year, you get into October, and they've still got to get the concrete poured yet, and they've still got to get the blacktop put down, and the temperatures are starting to get cold, and they're rushing things at the end of the year to get it done. This eliminates that too. I mean, because they know that they can do all that work in the spring next year when you've got the good temperatures and conditions are better than they are at the end of October, November. And then the third benefit is sometimes if you're going to see settlements in a trench, when you trench in the water, you trench in the sewer, you put the dirt back, over time that can settle. Most of the settlements you're going to see are going to occur in that first winter when it freezes and thaws again. So if there are any settlements in the trenches, the majority of them should show up before they're putting down the blacktop and the curb and stuff in the spring of 2021. So, I mean, that should protect that road even more, because we can get any trench settlements like that corrected before they finish the road. So actually, I mean, there's a few benefits like that come from extending that project schedule out into the spring of next year. And it shouldn't really have any detrimental effects, because you're not going to have any businesses that are looking to open, by June 1st next year. So whether or not that road is open and paved for traffic, at the end of this year versus June 30th of next year really isn't going to make too much of a difference.
Well, you'd think they'd be salivating over a project like this, because you're not working around homeowners, you're not working around time restrictions.
Yeah.
A good project to bid.
That's what we're hoping for.
Get into a bidding war.
Well, and right now, I mean, to be honest with you, with the COVID situation, the contractors, we talked about this a little bit at the EDA meeting as well, but contractors the prices seem to be good right now. If you've got projects that are bidding, because there's that uncertainty right now. A lot of the private development work is being held back because, those people are leery about the financing. And contractors, quite frankly, if they're still looking for work this year, they're hungry for projects, and they want to keep their employees employed just like everybody else does. So really right now is a good time to be putting a project like this out to bid.
Nice.
Let's hope the bid's coming good enough that we can build our storm sewer and build our turn lane.
You bet. That's what I'd like to see. So again, that's the last time here. Any more questions on the plan? Specific approval. If there isn't, then we need to go forward with the decision on resolution 2020-12, approving final plans and specs.
Mayor, I'll move approval of resolution 2020-12.
I'll second it. Let's go find out how it comes back.
Yeah.
Okay. There has been a motion made and second. We're on resolution 2020-12. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes pass. Okay, we got that out of the way. Next on the list is the update on the 2020 Canyon Pool opening and season. And Mark, are you going to speak on that, or Wayne, or who?
This is just kind of an update. I could start talking about this. We've been talking, Wayne and I, Cheryl, the pool manager, Cheryl Dahl, about, just kind of where we're at with things here, looking at the COVID-19 situation, everything being closed. And I did check around with some cities, and that ended up going out to other cities. So actually I heard back from, 14 or 15 different cities. And then also one of the cities heard back from our inspector that deals with all the cities in southeast Minnesota. Basically, with the exception of places like Rochester, everybody's kind of in a holding pattern right now, at least for the next couple of weeks. But all the cities that I talked to or heard back from said what they're doing is planning ahead with their hiring and their chemicals, their pools ready to open. And so basically we are kind of taking the same approach right now. Our goal would be to have that pool, whether it's first part of June or it's delayed, we still want to be open. So basically it's more information right now, and then I wanted to just see if anybody had any questions. And we'll see what the governor, what the state kind of tells us to do in the next few weeks. But right now, that's the direction that we're going to go, or that we've been going. And so I guess that's about all I have. I don't know, Wayne, if you have anything else.
No, it's 2 weeks once we put the hose in the pool.
Yeah. So we have a 2-week window right now, where we, the public works, Wayne and the public works guys basically have a 2-week window to kind of submit. So that's where we get toward the middle part of the month or the third week if something, and I would look at it more as a delayed cancellation unless we're told differently by the state. So that's about all I have on that. I don't know if there's any questions.
Yeah, Mark, this is Dan. I think, if, as long as the risk is low, you gotta give these kids something to do. And so, any way we can get that pool open, I think we got to do it. And one of the things maybe and this, you could check with Cheryl and Wayne, whatever, but if, let's say we had to open it up late, is there anything to prevent us, other than that we might run out of lifeguards because they're going off to college or whatever, from keeping it open a little later into the summer?
Yeah, it's going to be the staffing. And Cheryl, I will say though, last year, actually the last couple of years, talked to me about staying open later. Maybe it was a week or so.
We stayed open a week later, but just hours. because
Right, right.
starting with the high school kids and
Yeah.
college kids are back.
So we would kind of look at the thing, if we can keep it going longer, we will.
Sure.
It's just gonna depend on our personnel, who we can get to work.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I've been on with the mayors too in various different cities, and they all pretty much agree with what Mark has said. A thing that I was looking at too is the opportunity, like Dan said, give these kids something to look forward to. And I look at it this way too, it's a parent's responsibility. If they want their children there, okay. If they don't, then they can keep them at home. I also look at it this way, it might be that great if we have a great flood of kids there, maybe we could stagger the hours. Let's say like one group comes in for an hour and a half, they go back and another group comes in, you know, meaning of kids. I'm just saying, it's only an idea. Also look at it, if we could somehow maybe consider reducing the cost for these kids to go to the swimming for the summer. They put up with enough already this year. And this is something that maybe we can give back to the parents, and that if we can just cover the cost for the lifeguards and that, maybe we can have to eat some, but it's only a thought. But I definitely am in favor of going forward with getting the pool ready for the summer. And what I would like is for an opinion from the rest of you, feel the same way.
Hey, this is John. I was getting a lot of feedback from somebody when,
Yeah, it's coming from out there with you guys. I don't know. It's not coming from like Richard or from the phone and from here. So I'm not sure where that, I pulled the phone
Okay.
back, but it's some kind of noise coming from somebody there, and I don't know what.
the question is, did I hear right when you said it takes about 2 weeks to get it up and running?
Yes, that's correct.
Once we put the water in the pool, it takes about 2 weeks for the chemicals to get balanced out and to heat the pool.
Okay,
So like right now, we're gonna start cleaning it out tomorrow and paint the pool. And there's about a week of dry time on the paint. And then, we can hold off until mid-May, if we're gonna open June 1st as planned, I gotta have the hose going in the pool Monday the 18th and fill the pool up to have a time to things circulating, the water treated and get it heated.
okay, that was my question.
Okay. So
Is
just-
everybody in agreement? I'm sorry, Mark. I really would like to have, from the rest of the council, are you all in favor of going forward with this?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
All right, 10-4, there we go. That
Yeah, glad to hear it.
gives it, now we can go forward. Wayne can go forward with it, knowing that he's not spinning his wheels.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
I think it's
Okay.
good. So,
So is there anything else that we have to do on that outside of
No.
just an advisory? Okay. Does anybody else have any questions on the pool opening? Otherwise, we'll move forward. I take that as everybody's happy. Okay, approve of library COVID-19 reopening preparedness plan. And again, Mark, I believe you have the update on that. And
So,
we have a motion on that too.
yeah, the library has been partially or totally closed since May 16th. Based on the current status of the executive order, directives from the state and Stelco recommendations, basically what we're requesting is council approval for the plan to reopen the library in phases, and starting basically now phase 2 of the plan. But what I'm asking for tonight is just approval of this overall plan, and then as it evolves, we'll be able to just go to the next steps without having to go back to the council. We'll keep you updated, obviously, as we look at each step, and a lot of it, again, is going to depend on what the state tells us. So that's
So
all
we're-
I have.
we're in phase 2 right now.
Yes, correct. Yep. And you have that at the end of your packet. There's a memo from Michelle.
I'm reading that here.
Yep. So they're going into phase 2 right now, which is basically still mainly curbside with, limited patrons coming in using computers or fax and copy services, things like that. But it's mainly still curbside, and there still won't be any, children's programming, things like that. But that will kind of come back in with phase 3 and 4. So that's all I have on that. So we'll need a motion though to adopt the plan is what we're asking for.
I'll make the motion.
Yeah, Richard made the motion.
Need a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion's been made and second. Approved library COVID-19 reopening preparedness plan. All in favor, say aye.
I,
Ayes pass.
All right,
Okay,
that's all we
we
have.
got that. So,
I just had one question, and that was, how much patronage do you figure we'll get using the computers?
Well, those computers get used all the time. So I don't know, in the last few days, I don't know if we've had more than 1 or 2 people, but we anticipate that will continue. So to increase quite a bit.
So it's not like the staff is going to be spending all their time disinfecting computers.
No.
Okay.
Who seconded that last motion?
John did.
I think it was John.
Okay, thank you. Got it.
Okay, I believe that's all that we have on
Motion to,
the agenda. So is there a motion to any other thing that anybody has question about, first of all?
This is John. I just have a question for Derek and Joe. How are the easements coming?
Derek, you want to provide an update on that? I know you've talked with both the property owners here in the last few days.
Oh, sorry, I muted myself earlier. So yeah, so we've met with both the Traxlers and the Chad Lang with Festal Farms in these past couple of days. So we're hoping that we would have that process done by now, but unfortunately it's not. But we are making progress with it. These last couple of meetings had a lot of decisions that were made, and we got some good direction from them on what they what they want. So we will be talking about that in more detail at an upcoming meeting. There's a couple of items that we're basically going to need approval for before you can actually move forward with the actual easement. Yeah, that's kind of where we're at. It's in process, making progress, and hoping to have those secured pretty soon.
All right.
I think it's fair to say too that at this point, everything is still positive. There's no indication that we won't be able to successfully obtain those easements. And there's no concern at this point with going ahead with the advertising for the bids. Certainly by the time we get the bids and we're looking at awarding the contract, we should have a handle on those 2 easements.
Good.
so Derek and I, John, talked to both parties, Traxlers and Festal Foods, and I think we made a lot of progress. Most of it was clarification on, points. But I think overall we're very close to, getting at least kind of secured, not secured, but wrapped up offer that we're going to bring back to the council either at the meeting next week, or we're going to have to do a meeting the week after. But we have 11 points we went through, and I think 9 or 10 of them we're pretty much in agreement with. So I think there's just 1 or 2 things, and obviously we're not going to get into the details now because it's got to be done in closed session. But I think we're very close.
Okay. Look, I just heard where we're at.
So, yep. And I've really been trying to push this because I want to see those get wrapped up because we're going to bids here, and we want to try to get this finalized. So I think we're getting pretty close.
Okay,
John, I'm glad you brought it up because it was in my notes to bring that up too. So I appreciate you doing it and the update that we got. So any other questions? There isn't? How about adjourning the meeting, special meeting? We need a motion on, I'll make the motion to adjourn. Anybody want to second it?
I'll second that.
All right. A motion has been made and second to adjourn the special council meeting. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Aye, ayes pass. Have a good evening, you guys.
Happy birthday, Tom and Derek.